Hey everybody, I'm Pastor DJ Leroy, and with me as always is Sarah DeYoung and Dana Mashevsky, and welcome to this latest episode of That Podcast. What's going on?
Woo. What happened to the little sound machine?
It's way over there.
It's by me. It's almost the end of summer.
I know, right?
It's
August.
August.
That's the wrong sound for that. Wait.
It'll go on forever.
That's better. Mm-hmm. So I was just noticing, it is coming to the end of summer, but I really like your hat.
Thank you.
It's really cool. For those wondering what it looks like, it's really bright colored, green and pink and yellow, over a hat that it looks like it's some kind of cheetah print, but the bright sign says UFTA across the front.
It's how I was feeling today.
It's the most Sarah hat possible of just cheetah print, floral print. Mm-hmm. Yep.
And Midwestern sayings.
Yep.
Midwestern sayings. Very good.
Yeah. It's been a real UFTA of a day.
Really?
Kind of.
Well, why do you say that?
You know, just some of the things that people choose to do in their day.
Humanity is an interesting collection of.
Yep.
Yes, it's an interesting mix of human stuff.
It's the weird back to school season, so there's just a lot of people everywhere, and
that's true.
Weird people not working midway during the week because they're trying to get their kids ready for back to school and all the things happening.
I went to the cities this weekend and I forgot that that.
Did you go to the Mall of America?
Yes. I bought a lot of things, but it was also just so many people.
That's the Mall of America for you. Yep. I've heard that they don't heat that building. I don't know if that's a myth or not, or if it's just all body heat from people walking around, especially around Christmas time.
I could see that. I always remember my friends from college talking about Black Friday at the Mall of America, and I think that's my nightmare.
I've done it.
You have?
We did it last year.
Really? Never again?
Yeah. Okay, so I bought things on Black Friday, but what I did was I found them in store and then ordered them online when we got back in the car.
Nice.
It was not worth waiting in line to buy them.
That's a smart way to do it.
Yeah.
Just take a
Literally, I tried everything on in the stores, and then whatever I liked, I ordered because the lines were so long.
Well, you must have a good amount of patience then too, because sometimes it's instant gratification to buy. No. So you suffered until it came.
I think it's almost though I really like ordering stuff online because it's the instant gratification of I've got new stuff coming, and then in 3 to 5 days it's look, a gift.
No, see I'm great as long as you don't give me a shipping notification of hey, look, your thing has shipped. No, because now I'm gonna sit there and I'm gonna track it.
The second I get it, I will click on it and
10
go,
minutes refresh.
Why hasn't it shipped yet? You said it shipped and it's still sitting at the warehouse, even though it's the day you said it shipped.
Why is it in LA? Why did it go there? Why isn't it?
No patience.
Why isn't it here? Instant gratification.
Have you ever tracked a shipping thing and you've seen it literally go through the town that you're in?
Yeah.
Yep.
And go further in the opposite direction before
my Christmas cards this year, I went to track and I looked at it and I go, because I ordered them.
Philadelphia.
I ordered them on Shutterfly and I saw them go from Denver all the way over to New Jersey. I'm like, that's a weird route to take. And then it was out for delivery in New Jersey. Moorhead, Minnesota, and this town in New Jersey.
Drive them to your door.
Man, that's a long shift.
I always get very confused when my things go through West Fargo because I'm like, why am I in West Fargo? Why is the center in West Fargo?
Right.
I'm in Fargo.
Yep.
You overshot it by about 10 miles. Back it up. We got a package because you mentioned it's getting back to school. First time I've seen this done, Melissa bought all of Dylan's school supplies online and they came in one box.
Nice.
Oh.
And I was just like, that's wow.
Yeah. I've never thought of that.
Yeah. Do kids, I used to get so excited to pack my backpack for back to school. Mm-hmm. Do your kids get excited to do that, or is it
Does the little one, does Dylan still get excited and the other ones don't?
I think Dylan does, but last year was kind of an outlier because prior to that, it had been COVID season. So his first 2 years of school was COVID learning.
Oh, yeah.
And so last year was really kind of his first
normal school year.
Yeah, normal everything. So, yeah, that was kind of interesting, and so he's pretty pumped, I think, this time around. But he's also like, he's 8, and I just noticed this summer, I think he's grown about a foot this summer.
Oh, man.
Like he's just stretching out, just getting taller and taller. So,
Yep.
But yeah, he's fun. He's fun. The other two, Addie's already got senioritis. She's already counting down the days until she graduates. Yeah. Oh yeah. Pfft. This is senior year is like, whatever.
It's the best year yet. All the fun, but all the stress.
I was like, I don't remember being excited at all because I was also just nervous that meant that it ended and then I had to be an adult.
Yeah. Had to pick what you're going to do next.
Start adulting.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So we're all into the looking at different schools and figuring out what those things are. And my first experience with a senior needing senior pictures.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yep.
That is interesting.
Yep.
That is an industry.
It is.
Oh, yeah.
And I feel like every year it just gets more and more complex and bigger.
One of my mom's good like high school friends, she's a photographer, and she like did mine, and she did like half my class and everything. But I follow like her photography page on Facebook, and she posts her little like previews. I'm like, this is so dramatic. Why are we like, the poses just got so weird now? Where I'm like, but also I look back at like some of like not mine because I wouldn't do them, but other ones from like and I was like they're still dumb. Poses are still dumb.
The senior, it's a very specific, like I remember when I graduated high school, it was like you have to pose like against a graffiti wall or on a train track.
Right.
What was with the train tracks?
It's just the thing.
I wouldn't do it.
It was so cool.
I did like industrial, like fire, like I had a fire escape one.
Yep.
I was like, I won't do train tracks, but I'll fire escape.
It must be a Midwest thing because mine was on the West Coast. That's where I lived at the time, and so it was more. You had shots of the ocean, and you had shots of nature, and those were kind of the big ones. And then you go in the studio, and it's like going into like the JCPenney photography thing, with a backdrop and whatnot, and make this weird pose. But what I wonder about, right? Addie is practically a self-made professional photographer already with her phone. And it got me thinking, like, I don't think she has a whole lot of pictures unless she has a Polaroid camera too, and she can print pictures in Polaroids. And they're kind of neat. They're this little nostalgic thing.
Yeah.
But what in the world is she going to do with senior pictures? It's not like people...
They're not for her. They're for you.
Apparently, but I know where they're going to go. They're going to go in a storage box, and that's where they're going to be.
Well, some of them...
Hopefully you at least have like one.
Yeah.
Like you print one.
Part of it is so that way when she goes back to your guys' house, that there's still like this senior year, like 18-year-old shrine.
You need a shrine
there.
Yeah.
And then eventually it'll be like an additional shrine for each other kid down the road.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you just have it like just one specific wall in your house that goes, those are our kids. And
and then it'll get updated when she gets married.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And then when she has kids, you'll take them down and replace them.
So I get that because that's kind of like what it was 20 years ago in my parents' house. But now all of the pictures, like everything is digital. Like my wife was even saying, we have all these pictures. Why don't we just, send them to a company and get them all digitized? I'm like, no, I want these old pictures.
Well, there's something satisfying about, like, I'm working on right now, printing out just like pictures from my phone and all that stuff. And I am convinced that I will lose my memory fully at some point. So I'm writing on the back of them, like, this is the story involved with this one. This is who's in it. But there's something satisfying about physically going through like printed out photos.
There is. And the last time I actually went through any of our actual photos, because I ended up inheriting all of the photos from my childhood that survived a flood here in
97.
Yep.
It was later than that. It was the summer of 2000.
Oh,
okay.
And so
not the dramatic one.
Right. Not I was there for that one too. This was it was a weird kind of flood where it was just like it just kept raining and raining and raining one summer, and a bunch of houses down in South Fargo flooded because their storm drains on the streets weren't open properly. Anyway, our house was one of them. My parents' house was one of them. So all of my childhood possessions are gone. I have not really nothing.
At least you have like a tragic story to match yours.
You don't have that? No?
Nope. They're just poof.
They just poof. Just disappeared one day.
Yep.
So the pictures that did survive, because it was the basement that flooded and all my worldly possessions as a college student was in the basement. And basically I got a check that bought me a computer for when I went off to seminary. And it's kind of nice to start fresh. But when we were getting ready for my mom's funeral, I went through all those pictures and it was just this rush of nostalgia and memory and things like that, which was really kind of cool. And be able to read the back, and there are things in there that I had either forgotten about or knew nothing about. And that was kind of neat that I don't think you get with a digital record. Although when I go and look at the pictures that are digital, I can kind of see a time frame of my entire family, the girls getting older and Dylan being born. And I remember where we were at those different times. So I don't know. I'm kind of back and forth.
Yeah.
I like the digital, but I also like actual pictures.
It's the mix of, it's so nice, the ease of being able to take pictures now than it used to be, but then you don't have the physical, like you don't get the excitement of printing them and then looking through what's in this batch.
Right.
Was your finger covering the flash in the disposable camera?
That is the one thing of like, it is nice to have the physical ones, but like at least now you know that you took a good photo and you don't have to wait for it. And then you're like, look at that. I ruined it.
Blurry.
Well, that was a waste.
The nice thing also about the digital ones too is that they go as big as your screen. So if you have a big screen, you get a big picture.
Yeah.
So, well, anyway,
Did Addie take soccer ones?
She hasn't taken them yet. We have the pre photo session meeting, which I'm not exactly sure what that is.
That is planning out the outfits, man.
Yeah.
I have not.
Multiple outfit changes.
DJ's like, I'm just going to be there with the debit card
I'm just
to
gonna
swipe and nod.
That's my role. That's exactly what my role is. And I have no say in any of the rest of the stuff.
Yep.
Unless they want to use me as a measure to be like anything that dad likes, the answer is no. So,
I like that one. Nope, we're not doing that.
Never mind.
and this is being both my daughter and my wife. So it's like, just tell me what you want me to do. Well, anyway, speaking of daughter and wife, right now we're in the sermon series Confronting Christianity, and I think up until the last two, I don't think any of the questions per se were really contentious or could be really contentious. But the one I'm working on this week for this next upcoming Sunday, for the Sunday, August 7th, is a contentious one. And the one prior could be, but I was surprised by, I should say, not surprised so much, but just validated by the responses that I've gotten back from the group of people that the sermon was seeking to address. The question for last Sunday was, doesn't Christianity denigrate women? And it was it was affirming, I should say, of the feedback that I've gotten since from women saying, there was things that were shared that they'd never heard before, that that they were moved by it, that they could feel God speaking into their lives through it. So I wanted to talk to both of you about it, being as you're both women and I'm not, so what do I know? About that question. So I'm going to ask a little differently, and if I get your guys' feedback on this. Do you think that Christianity historically or even today puts women in a second class status? Or do you think that the Bible, I'm going to ask a couple questions, you can answer what you want. Do you think that the Bible puts women down? If you don't think either one of those things, and why? If you don't think either one of those things, why do you think the culture that we live in believes these canards? And if you're wondering what a canard is, my wife asked me because I use it on Sunday. Canard means fake news. It's a fake narrative. That's a canard. Okay. Who wants to go first?
Well, I guess I would say I've never in reading the Bible felt that it was treating women as second class or like lesser than. I think that I've always thought that it's more of the culture surrounding, if you think about it, even the Constitution is written in mostly he, him pronouns because at the time, that's what it was talking to.
Right.
Yep.
So I guess I've always thought of it's more the culture of how the people who translated it and the people who were reading it at the time and things like that have translated and taught and spoke to those messages versus what the Bible actually says.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd agree with that just because it's like, I don't think the Bible specifically, but I think just like people have used it as that way when really that's not what it's about. And it's just like, that's their excuse to keep doing that. It's just to use that even though that's not what it's saying.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's something to that. I think there also is a history
because historically
of using the Bible for power.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, the Bible would agree with you in its narrative as it lays it out. When I was giving the message, the first thing I did though was I showed a clip from Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, because Rebecca McLaughlin uses that as her image of explaining what's actually happening. Doesn't the Bible, denigrate women, attack their reputation, deny their importance? It's kind of like if you, spoiler alert, you guys have read all the Harry Potter books, right? Seen all the movies?
I've seen all the movies.
Okay.
Since when?
I finished this year for the first time.
Oh, okay.
Well, Harry Potter,
I don't remember you.
but you've read books. You've read book 7, right?
No, I've never read any of them.
She's never read any of them.
You've seen the movies.
Yeah.
Okay. And you as well?
I have not read all of them.
Okay. Have you seen all the
but
movies?
I've seen all of them.
You've seen
and
all
I
of
know what happened. Like, I've also read that section of the book.
That was
I will
actually,
admit to that.
in preparing the message, that was my biggest worry. I'm like, which kids' hearts am I gonna crush by like? But I'm like, the movie's 10 years old. The book is even older than
It's
that.
at its time.
Yeah, right. You've had your chance.
I remember going with my mom to pick up that book at the release.
Right?
At like midnight.
Oh, that was so. I hope there's something like that again, because that was kind of a neat time where like this culture of YouTube and online TikTok, all that stuff, everything's a screen, are like going and getting books and opening books and reading
like
books.
the release of this book is like the biggest thing happening.
Yeah. Absolutely crazy. Anyway, in the scene, you have Severus Snape doing an unforgivable curse, the killing curse, on Dumbledore. And what you hear Dumbledore say right before he does it, and Harry's watching in the distance and all these bad guys are there, is he just says, "Severus, please." And it seems like he's begging Severus, Professor Snape, the professor none of us like, to not do this. And the whole thing in the story is he on Dumbledore's side or is he not on Dumbledore's side? He makes an unbreakable vow that he will do this right at the beginning. So there's this sense that Snape's
he is the evil one.
Yeah. He's a double agent.
Right. He's awful.
He's awful, right? However, when you get into book 7, when you get into the 8th movie, because they split the last one into 2, we discussed.
Remember when they did that for everything?
Yeah.
Thanks, Harry Potter, for ruining everything. Everything has to be 2 parts at the end.
Got to squeeze in every dollar, every little bit. You discover that this was actually Dumbledore's request, because Dumbledore was dying. He was dying from a curse that wouldn't be changed. And so for his great plan to be carried out to defeat Lord Voldemort and to save Harry Potter, he recruited Snape to be the one to finish him off in the end. And also to protect Draco Malfoy.
Because he knew Draco couldn't do it.
Right. Well, and in the book, I think it says like his soul has not been tainted yet by taking a life. Almost like I don't care
protecting him.
I don't care about you, Snape, but we're not going to hurt
Right.
Draco.
You've already killed people. This kid has a chance. We can save him.
Does he?
Well, the point being is that when you see it that way and you look back on it, he's not begging Snape not to do this. He's saying, Come on.
Yeah.
Do it before
Please.
someone else does.
Which changes the entire understanding of what was read.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same with the Bible on most usually contentious issues, that if you don't understand the entire narrative and you're picking and choosing certain verses that by themselves would speak, negatively about one group of people, whether it's women, whether it's, other ethnicities. Yeah, I mean, it can seem pretty harsh. But when you look at the overall narrative of what's being shared, that's where things get much clearer. And I've had this thinking for a while that as the centuries have gone on, as humanity has progressed in knowledge and in life expectancy and health and technology, we're discovering more of a biblical ethic than originally. Like the point that I would make is the things that we take for granted but we value in our modern culture, it's very easy to look at the past and say, what a bunch of bigots and this and
They
that.
didn't know anything.
Right. However, when you look at something like an ancient collection of books like the Bible that it really is the soul of Western society, because we're in Western society. Values like liberty, justice, freedom, equality, they had to start someplace. They didn't just come about last week. And really the place that started all that is the Bible. So it took us a long time in the United States, relatively speaking, to reach a point where we have women's suffrage and at least in the law of the land, equal rights, not equal outcomes, but equal opportunities under the law for men and women. But how did we get there? Well, it was the Bible that was really the driving force. And what do I mean by that? So there's a couple things. One thing has to do with the word metaphor. Do you know what a metaphor is? Mm-hmm. What's a what
comparison?
I did until you asked me.
It's not saying, oh yeah, I know what a metaphor is. Wait, what?
Do I though?
It's a comparison that does not use like or as.
Okay, so then what's the one that? Okay, thank you.
Nice.
Always remember.
Because I don't remember which is which.
Now explain irony, because I never can figure that one out.
I can't get that one.
All I know is Alanis Morissette's song is not ironic.
No.
It's
No,
a
it's
whole
not.
lot of coincidences or something like that. Yeah. Isn't it ironic?
It's a great
See,
song.
now I'm just questioning everything about everything. It is a good song, though. Great. Now that's going to be stuck in my head.
Yep. Here's
Sorry.
your earworm for the day.
All right, so probably the best known metaphor, everyone knows it. If I say it, you'll know how to respond it. All the world's comes from William Shakespeare. All the world is a stage.
Oh, yep. The world's a stage. Yeah.
The world is a stage, and all of the people are simply actors. That's from William Shakespeare. Dana's still like, what?
Dana's still an oyster.
No, I'm like, I did not do
Shakespeare.
Shakespeare.
Yeah, him. In high school. Missed it. Skipped it.
Wow. Good timing.
I think I did Romeo and Juliet. That's
Romeo
it.
and Juliet.
Never any others.
Well, often that's pointed to as like
Hamlet's Lion King. That's all I know. That's as much as I got.
It's a great version of it.
I know Hamlet from Billy Madison. That's pretty much it.
That's also a great version.
Yeah.
The skull.
To die, to sleep. Anyway, that is a good example of what a metaphor is. I didn't use like or at. Or yeah, I guess all the world is a stage.
Yep. In the world.
And all the people are actors rather than like.
It's more literal than simile.
When we talk in metaphor,
I'm not good with like the English language. All of this is just like, no.
It's like going back to English 101.
it's amazing what we discover when we do this.
Yep.
A lot of what you see in the Bible is giving imagery or metaphor because we can't see God. Mm-hmm. And God is beyond our comprehension. So we necessarily need metaphor in order to understand who God is and what God's expectations are. And so the way I worded, what is a metaphor? It's something that suggests something else by relationship, association, or resemblance. Or in other words, a symbol. Like, you guys know what symbols are, right? I mean, they point you to something. Well, in the beginning, when we hear about creation in the beginning, before it says Adam and then Adam was put to sleep and Eve came from his rib or from his side, however you want to read that, you have the creation story of the 6 days, and in there it speaks about male and female humans. And male and female humans together equal a living metaphor for God. So it's not one or the other, it's both. They're both, it says, in the beginning, God made them in his own image, male and female, he created them. That's kind of the point, that from the beginning, there's not a hierarchy. Like, here's God, then right under God is the angels, and under the angels is males, and under him is females, and then you get children, and then mammals, and whatever the order of animals you want, down
it's
to
not like a
minerals.
pyramid system.
Exactly.
Right.
Which the medieval church did look at it that way, and that kind of structure doesn't come from the Bible. It actually comes from Greek philosophy. My bone I like to chew on with Greek philosophy and all the things that it is and isn't. But from the beginning, male and female are created equal and are made in God's image, both of them. So they're the same in God's eyes. They're equal, and yet they are both unique. Because how could God have chosen to reproduce humans? He could have made us asexual. Not a space sexual, whatever that means. Able to just reproduce yourself, make a carbon copy of yourself.
Clones.
There are animals that do that. I mean, snakes. There's certain snakes that can do that, which is just weird. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I did not learn that on Animal Planet.
Copperhead snake can reproduce itself without any male and female
I knew
copperheads
there
doing
was
it.
like a fish that could do that.
Yep.
Also jellyfish. Can't they also do that?
Maybe.
There's like an immortal jellyfish. It just clones itself until it never
copy-paste.
really dies.
An immoral jellyfish, like
Immortal.
Immortal. I thought you said immoral. I'm like,
And it's got no values.
It just definitely. No.
it's immoral.
Yeah. I'm gonna look up what that jellyfish is called.
I've heard of that. I've actually heard about that because I'm a fan of the Big Bang Theory. It was mentioned on there.
All I can think of as cloning is that sheep from the 90s that they cloned.
Dolly.
Dolly, yep.
Or is it Polly?
No, I think it was Dolly.
Dolly the sheep. Wasn't she named after Dolly Parton?
Yeah.
I don't know. I would hope
Wouldn't
so.
you know that?
I hope so. I've got my Dolly Parton shirt on today.
I was blinded by the brilliance of your UFTA hat. I missed your Dolly Parton
when I
shirt.
said that this is completely
It says,
the
"I
most
beg your
Sarah
pardon."
thing. This is the most Sarah.
This is my natural form.
Just
Dolly Parton t-shirt.
All the cheetah print and Dolly Parton.
Yeah. This is the definitive Sarah. No. She's missing something. She's missing her pumpkin latte.
It's almost time.
It's almost.
It's almost.
I'm
Pumpkin
really
spice.
sad that summer's over and Sarah's like, pumpkin spice.
Oh.
She was named after Dolly Parton. Fun fact.
Yeah, fun fact. So on a side note, because I'm abstract random, summer's your favorite season?
No.
Or you've liked summer?
I like the idea of summer. Also, for me, summer means my birthday. So
I gotcha.
I've always liked summer. I also always liked summer because it meant that I didn't have to go to school.
Oh, sure.
Just freedom.
I think that's my association of liking summer. I don't like how hot it gets though.
Yeah.
So
Well, that's true. That is true. I like fall. Sarah?
Christmas season.
Christmas.
So November through
was obvious.
February in my house.
In your house, but around here it's April. Like
Yeah.
November through April
Yeah.
is
I get over the snow, but yeah, Christmas.
Christmas continues. Okay, so you talked about a term that is even in our Ten Commandments, or not 10 Commandments, in our founding documents. When it said all men are created equal, there's two ways of reading that. And historically, we can see one of them being read that way. But in the Bible, whenever you see the word man and it's used plural, that literally means men and women. Mm-hmm. It doesn't just mean a lot of men. Like, let us make man in our image. There, the term is not male. It means male and female. So in the Bible, male and female equals man, which equals mankind. And as language has evolved, we've made it into humankind. Mm-hmm. And now I guess humanity would probably be the most up-to-date term to describe humans, right? Yeah. But in the Bible, all of those mean the same thing, male and female, when it just says man, unless it's talking about a specific man, like one person, like the man David. But when it talks about man in generalities, it means men and women. Mm-hmm. Okay. And then
they couldn't just say that.
Couldn't just say. Well, I think it has to do a bit with translation of language because, I mean, when did the term human come around?
Go to the Google machine.
Go to the Google machine, and then humanity after that, right?
Right.
As language evolves and as we come up with new terms for things, that's where this stuff comes from. I can tell you one thing: the term heterosexual and the term homosexual, neither one of those existed until the end of the 19th century.
Mm-hmm. Human was first used in the 13th century.
Okay. Human?
Yep. Humanity was in the 1400s.
So you have, up until that time, the term to describe humanity would have been mankind or man and woman or male and female. Well, not male and female. Those are more modern terms too. Yeah. Anyway, what was humanity's role? Why did God make us? Because this is important too to differentiate. Is there a hierarchy? Well, in the Bible, the first thing is that humanity's role or purpose is to rule over creation. And some people don't like that because who are we to rule over anything? In the Bible, it says have dominion. A better way to explain what that rulership looks like is stewardship. We're to steward God's creation, which, regardless of where you are politically, whether you think there's climate change or not, I think that part of the calling of a Christian is to understand that all that we have isn't ours, that it belongs from God, and that we should take care of it to pass it on to the next generation. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think we could all agree with that, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, good. Get hate mail like, you're in North Dakota, that's not going to be in the ocean like Florida is or whatever. People get angry about silly stuff like that. So the first one is rule, but then the second one has to do with how God created. It says, so God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. That means that whether you're male or whether you're female, you are an image bearer of the one true God. And that's pretty cool. Mm-hmm. And God made us to be in relationship with each other and in relationship with God. Mm-hmm. That's our kind of our natural inclinations. To be in relationship. There's not a whole lot of people that truly have the gift of solitude. All of us have times where, especially if you're introverted, where you need time alone, but we'll inevitably become lonely over time when our batteries are recharged because we want to be in relation. Even if it's, I don't want to talk to anybody, but I'll go to a store and just go shopping just to be around other people. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I think even if you think about how people use entertainment now, not many people are just watching like a trail cam of animals. Like people are watching movies with actors, TikToks, YouTube videos, whatever.
Right.
With other people in it.
We are social beings. Mm-hmm. There are people that are truly like, nope, I want to live in the woods and I don't want to talk to anybody. But those are more the exception than the rule. Mm-hmm. Are you shaking your head like, I don't want to live in the woods, but I want to be alone.
I'm somewhere in
the city.
Because I literally thought about this week and I'm like, why do people live in Alaska? Mm-hmm. Why? There's You want to live next to a bear? That's great. Not me. Absolutely not. I am city dwelling. But I want no one around.
Dana's been very, very gifted to be an introvert. That's been the target of a lot of extroverted friends.
I don't know how I do this either, though. Like, why?
Yep.
So many.
She's like, I just want to be home. We're like, no.
Like, what are you doing? I'm at home.
Leave
Why?
me alone.
Because that's what I do.
That's my thing.
Where else would I be?
Right. I'm in my spot.
Yep.
Okay, so then we get to the third one, which has to do with the relationship of both the first two, and it's humanity's role is to create. God says, "Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth." That's an ongoing mandate that has not ended. And so, why is that important? It's how God chooses to create more humans, to create more life. And so right at the beginning, you have this equality of men and women who are equal in the eyes of God and yet unique. They're not the same. They're not carbon copies of each other. But with both of them together, God creates life. When, as the next message I give, I might have to speak about marital relations quite a bit. And so I'm trying to figure out how to use different terms. And Gail in her office had the best one. She said, just say to the people in church, carnal knowledge. They'll know what you're talking about.
Gail does have the best one-liners.
Because it's also like the most like unexpected place.
Yep.
Right.
Like, Gail said that.
Or just say yada, yada, yada. They'll know what you mean.
That's a Paulism.
That's a Paul, yeah. Paul will know what we mean.
Yep.
Anyway, that it takes two people, physical intimacy, babies. Mm-hmm. Okay? That's the role. And it's completely equal between the men and the woman. What happened? Because we get this one phrase that I have friends that I think they would consider themselves feminist, that don't like the fact that in the story of Adam and Eve, you got Adam first, and then he says, it's not good for Adam to be alone. I will make him a helper fit for him. Is that a subordinate role, do you think? A helper? It's been taken that way.
I was going to say, I think you could interpret it that way, but I think it would also depend on, I want to phrase this right. Like I think about the evolution of almost like in an office role. You don't have secretaries anymore. You have like
personal assistants.
Yeah. You have, it's all dependent on what the above leader has intended for that role.
Right. But I will say that in the use of the language and even explaining it, you're giving it a hierarchy where the assistant is a lesser role. She has someone who is above her boss. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Or his boss. Mm-hmm. The helper is a subordinate role in that example. Mm-hmm. Would you agree?
Yes and no, because I think in Adam and Eve, Adam wouldn't be Eve's. God is Eve's God, not Adam.
Oh no, and I agree with you. I'm talking about the example of a boss with a secretary, where we don't use the term secretary anymore, but it's not as if the boss would necessarily treat his assistant, whoever that may be. Even if you have a female boss, the assistant's job is to take care of the needs that I need them to do, to assist. Mm-hmm. Right. And I get paid more than them. And do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Different roles.
Right. And that's often how we use the term helper, though. It's more of a subordinate in just the way our language is. But if you look it up in Hebrew, there's something interesting about the word. So, two things. The word in Hebrew is azer, which literally means ally. So helper is not in this context. I think it's a problem of the English language.
I was going to say, like, when you give examples, I can't think of one that's, like, not hierarchy.
Yeah.
Right.
But I think that's an English thing, not...
like Adam and Eve, I'm like, if he's meant to take care of the earth and populate it, he can't without her. So, like, there can't be a hierarchy because he like actually needs her.
Right.
And that's where it's like confusing.
And she needs him.
You know what it almost is? It's like in the office, like you have the assistant branch manager and the assistant to the assistant branch manager. It's what it is. Yeah. Like Adam is Michael Scott. Eve is Dwight.
I was going to say, I'm the assistant branch. He's the assistant to the branch manager. Yeah. Yes. Mm-hmm. So the term is ally, but something else that's interesting about Scripture, more so than the woman is only called the helper once. The person in the Old Testament who's called the helper the most is God.
Oh.
So it doesn't have an inferior status to the man. In fact, it's basically presupposed that they are helpers to each other. They're co-workers, if you will, and are equal in the boss's eyes, who's God.
Mm-hmm. I just like the idea of Adam and Eve as co-workers. That's funny to me. Like
we're co-workers.
I'm still on the Office like reference, and it's like, okay, so Eve would definitely be Jim, and Adam is Dwight. Got it.
And
we're co-workers. We're
can
not
somebody
friends.
please make that into a meme and send it to us?
And when you get into the story of the serpent and the fruit, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, it all checks out.
And that's where we go next. So what happens to this harmonious relationship established by God for the purpose of being the good creation, which is what we're meant to be? Well, you get Genesis 3:6. So when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was a delight to the eyes, and that the tree was to be desired to make one wise, she took of its fruit and ate. I'm reading really small print here. And she also gave some to her husband who was with her, and he ate. I have seen documents in the history of Christendom that blame Eve for the fall of humanity into sin.
Adam still ate
like
it too, though.
Yeah.
Right? Only in the Bible is only one person blamed for the sin of humanity, and it's in the New Testament. It's in Paul's letters, and the one who's blamed is Adam, not Eve. But the church has spoken. I'm not saying the modern church is like this, but it's one of those tropes. It's one of those stories. We'll call it a canard. One of those canards, false narrative, that's been read into the history of the church, where women like Eve, like Mary Magdalene, those are usually the one. Mary, the sister of Martha, they're given bad reputations, not because of what Scripture says, but how humanity uses it. And this story actually presupposes that's going to happen. See, in eating the fruit, you guys all caught it right away. Who was right there with Eve?
Adam.
In the story, the one who actually failed the test is Adam. Only because he was given the command by God, if you eat of this, you will surely die. He shared that information with Eve, but in the role of having dominion, and Eve had it too, but in the role of having dominion, what should Adam have done? He should have walked over and crushed the serpent's head. Because that then becomes something that God says he's going to restore. I will give you a blessed seed, a child, and you will crush the serpent's head, but he will bite your heel, but you will crush the serpent's head. That's been understood theologically as the coming of Jesus Christ to make all things right. After sin is established in the earth and death as a consequence of sin, and that the serpent is was taken over by the devil, or is a manifestation of the devil, however you want to read that. Those are the great enemies that, going forth in the rest of Scripture, God is dealing with. So he has this perfect, harmonious creation in the garden. Sin enters into the world with death as a consequence of sin, and with the power of the devil in creation Adam and Eve, having eaten the fruit, they're now bound to a word of wanting to be their own gods. In other words, not trusting God. It's this whole breakdown in the order of how things are supposed to be in relationship to God. And so what goes forth is not the Bible condoning oppression from one group of people to another. What you end up getting after both the woman and the man choose to sin is that the rest of the Bible is an all too honest report of how people treat each other, and in particular wield power against each other in a broken creation. So, I mean, that's kind of the long view. Why is it taking us so long to get to a point of equal rights? Well, could it be that just the reaction of time with the Word of God going forward, speaking truth, has taken this long to get to a point where there's some semblance of equality? It's not perfect by any means and won't be this side of the eschaton of Christ coming, because there's always going to be sin. But that's the starting point. Harmony at the beginning, broken by sin, and then God is working to save his creation from the harm that it's put itself into. And what is one of the byproducts of that harm? Oppression. Oppression of one group over another, or one person over another. You see the oppression in families. You see the oppression in ethnic groups. You see the oppression in nations. It's a power.
Everywhere.
It's a power struggle everywhere. And we speak of it like this way. In a naturalistic fashion, the world is designed that for natural selection, and that might makes right. So there you go. That's how the story is played out. So then the question comes then, okay, well then how does the Bible speak about women? If it starts with this place of equality that goes to a place of inequality, how do we get to a point where we seek returning to equality? Well, you get Jesus and his interaction with women, which is really fascinating. Mm-hmm. In the New Testament, the portrayal of women engaging with Jesus is stunningly countercultural. Mm-hmm. In the time that it was written, mm-hmm. and even in many ways today too. And you can actually track it if you ever chose to do this. Track Jesus' interaction and every time that he talks about women, and what he says, and what the consequence of what he says is. It's very fascinating. First of all, Jesus stops to address women on the way to the cross. It's the only group that he stops to see. As he's going to the cross, we hear about him stumbling along, carrying his cross. Simon of Cyrene's made to carry his cross. But he stops in Luke chapter 23, and he speaks to the women, and he gives them a title of honor. He says, daughters of Jerusalem, do not weep for me, but weep for yourselves and your children. And his concern is for them, not himself. Jesus' valuing of women is unmistakable in the healing accounts. So some churchgoers, some bigwigs in the synagogue get all in a huff because Jesus healed a woman on Sunday. It's church day. Mm-hmm. What are you doing? And it basically makes the argument there's 6 days to heal. Come back one of those days. This is what Jesus says. He says, then the Lord answered him, you hypocrites, does not each of you on the Sabbath untie his ox or his donkey from the manger and lead it away to water it? This is in Luke chapter 13, verses 15 through 17. They're making the value of this woman less than livestock. And Jesus isn't having any of it. Listen to what he says. And ought not this woman, that's the first thing he says, the title of honor for the image of God. Remember? Men and women? Mm-hmm. So calling her not just a woman, but this woman, a person with inherent intrinsic value, and names her, and you're the image of God. That's what woman means. And then he goes on and he says, and a daughter of Abraham. Abraham is the one who's specially chosen by God and blessed to be a blessing to the entire world, and that blessing would rest on both his sons and his daughters. So that's what Jesus is saying about the woman that the church leaders are saying is less than livestock, whom Satan bound for 18 years be loosed from this bond on the Sabbath day. After he says this, everybody in the room, this is how, when the truth gets spoken, it has a way of changing even groups of people because we get so clouded by the lies of the world. It says, and as he said these things, all his adversaries were put to shame, and all the people rejoiced at all the glorious things that were done by him. Any thoughts on that stuff so far?
No, it's cool to hear in this context.
Yeah.
Well, and gotta go with Jesus. I mean,
He's usually right, and by usually it's all the
Usually
time.
a good choice.
even in the other parts, and honestly, all the Bible is Jesus. You just got to understand the context in which it's given and what word stands and what doesn't. But honestly, if you find something difficult to understand in the Old Testament, just go to Jesus. Find out what he's talking about on the same subject and go with that. That's usually a good way to go. Jesus elevates, this is the I think the third point about, fourth point. Jesus elevates women as moral examples. He basically scolds this Pharisee named Simon in his own house because this woman comes up and she's crying tears and she begins, crying on Jesus' feet and then wiping away the tears with her hair and, anoints his feet. And Simon's all ticked off. He's like, that woman's a known sinner. She's bad. Jesus says, do you see this woman? Again, title of you're an image bearer of God. You did not anoint my head with oil, but she has anointed my feet with ointment. Therefore I tell you, her sins, which are many, are forgiven, for she loved much. So this woman is lifted up as a moral example to follow. Really, sometimes we're like, what are the examples in the Bible that we should follow? Sometimes people follow the wrong examples. This is an example for everybody to follow. Turn to Jesus. Give him all your stuff. All your bad stuff. Yep. Just give it to him. He'll take it. And this one, someone told me they were really surprised by this. Jesus had female disciples. It wasn't just the 12. They get a special designation as the apostles. But all the other ones are also disciples. Now, some people will say, no, they're not really disciples. They're just women folk that are serving the men folk and traveling with them, but they're not actual disciples. You can make an argument for that because of the times and just the way things were, except for Luke chapter 10, verses 41 through 42. There you have the story of Martha and Mary. It says, but the Lord answered her, Martha, Martha, Martha. Martha. Yep. You are anxious and troubled about many things, but one thing is necessary. Mary has chosen the good portion, which will not be taken away from her. Martha's doing the usual roles for women that they've been traditional roles even to our day. The cooking, the cleaning. It's not biblical. It just happens to be cultural. Mary doesn't do this while Martha's doing all the work. She goes and sits down at the feet of Jesus just like any of the men were. And Jesus' response wasn't, Mary, I'm glad you're here. Go make us some sandwiches. He treats her like he would any of the disciples. And then when questioned about it by Martha, Jesus' response is, she's chosen the good portion. She's chosen it. I'm not taking it away from her. So there you have an example of an actual disciple doing what a disciple does with their teacher. Any questions on Jesus?
No. I don't know if this point was made to in there, but one of the things that always stood out for me from doing like the Lenten and Easter dramas that we do here is the power of it. It wasn't one of the 12 disciples who went and found Jesus in the tomb and was the first to share the message. Yeah. It was women.
Right.
Yep. The first preacher was women. When all the disciples scattered, who stuck around near the cross? The women. I mean, it's not, and I'm not, don't misunderstand. I'm not putting women on a higher pedestal, because also when the angel first shows up in the Gospel of Mark, it's to women and they all run away and don't tell anybody. But then
we're all still sinners.
But exactly, that's kind of the point. But the first preacher of the gospel was a woman. I mean, Mary Magdalene. He's risen, and even Mary Magdalene. I mean, she's had a horrible canard said about her throughout the history of the church. That's just not true.
Right.
That she was a prostitute and all these things. Well, no, she was someone who had 7 demons in her. She was possessed and set free from Jesus. And so follow
It's
Jesus.
unfortunately one of the idea that the Bible, second class as women is unfortunately the bad side of culture surrounding Christianity sometimes.
And that's the point that is being shared after we get through Genesis 1 and into Genesis 2. The whole rest of it, until you get to basically to Jesus, is explaining and recording just how bad people are to each other. And then God will speak words. And even the words that we find super strange in the law were actually given to protect, especially when it pertains to women, was given to protect a woman's value and honor in an oppressive society where she was treated as second or even third class or a slave. Like there's a verse, we've talked about this before in, I want to say it's Leviticus or something. It's one of those hard words where it's like, if a man knows a woman when she's a virgin and isn't married to her, basically,
Oh, yep.
he has to pay the bride price, and if he doesn't, no harm shall come to her. And it's like, wait a minute, girl gets raped and she has to marry the guy?
Sounds terrible.
Sounds terrible. Yeah,
Right. Yep.
it does. But in the context in which it was given, it was given to protect the woman from basically death. I mean, that's what it comes down to. Not that she would be put to death, but that she would be destitute and have no way of living and surviving. And it would stop any kind of honor war that would have happened between the tribes in Israel. It was a law given to Israel at a specific time. It's not for 21st century United States.
Right.
We have better laws.
We have other laws to do that.
Because it's not just a sin, it's a felony.
Yep. Judge DJ.
That needs to be on the mug.
I need that somewhere. That's great.
There are consequences in real life. That's all I'm saying.
We're getting t-shirts.
All right. So probably one of the biggest slobber knockers verses in the Bible, or clobber knockers, or however you want to say that. I think of like Marvel superheroes. Wham, boom, pow, is Ephesians chapter 5, 22 through 32, 31. And I've been a pastor preaching in churches about 20 years. And I was surprised by this, and I shouldn't have been, because I have preached a lot in 20 years. So most churches follow a preset preaching schedule of the Bible that has an Old Testament reading, a New Testament reading, a Psalm reading, and a Gospel reading. It's called the Revised Common Lectionary. Most churches throughout the world use one form of it. There's the Roman Catholic version. There's the Greek Orthodox version. There's the Protestant version, or Lutheran version, and they're all fairly similar. And the reason for it is that in 3 years you're supposed to be able to have heard most of the Bible on Sunday morning. Sometimes they repeat even certain verses, but what's not in any of them at any time in that entire Revised Common Lectionary of Roman Catholics or Lutherans. There's no reading of Ephesians 25 or Ephesians 5, 22 through 33.
Why?
I don't know. I think sometimes
Someone somewhere was like, don't like it.
Yeah, I sometimes I think people will believe the hype in the culture about themselves, especially Christians, about the church. We made all these mistakes, so on and so forth. Yeah, we've made mistakes. This one made me scratch my head a little bit, because as I did research on Ephesians 5, I found this to be absolutely brilliant to speak to the equality between men and women. But because most people I don't think get past the first verse, it breaks down. So, what's it say? It's known as the marriage metaphor in Ephesians. Remember, Ephesians is a symbol pointing to something else. Paul's going to speak about marriage between a husband and a wife as equivalent or as a symbol pointing to the relationship between Jesus and the church. Okay? So one's going to have the role of husband, one's going to have the role of wife. Jesus will have the role of husband, the church will have the role of wife.
I think I know what verse this is.
I was like, now that, yeah.
You had like an aha moment there.
I
was
was
like,
like,
I know which
few,
one's
and I was like, I've already started cringing from the first part.
The minute you said that they don't
Yeah.
get past the first verse, I was like, oh, it's
Ding, ding,
this
ding.
one.
So what's the first verse? It says, wives, submit. And at that point, the Bible is closed.
And we're like, no.
Let's see. Let's go back to Jesus and Luke. That was a lot better. It says, wives, submit to your husbands as to the Lord. And then it goes on, verse 23. For the husband is the head of the wife, even as Christ is the head of the church, his body, and is himself its Savior. Goes on in verse 24. Now, as the church submits to Christ, so also wives should submit in everything to their husbands. Can I get an amen? Crickets.
Nope.
Just crickets. And it's interesting because there's three things that are offensive. 1, submit. 2, the husband is the head of the wife. And 3, I'm supposed to submit in everything.
This is one of those verses, you know, those Bible verses that like make parents like tap their kids to be like, are you listening? This is one that I think if any husband was to like kind of elbow his wife a little bit to be like, are you listening? I don't think you'd be living long after that.
No.
It was funny. I said in church on Sunday after I read this, I said, women, can I get an amen? Crickets.
Nothing. You get nothing.
Better than booze.
Yeah, right.
At least they're not like throwing tomatoes at you.
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
Cook comes out and pulls you off stage.
that's always a danger. That's why I like being on the stage in the ark. I got a little bit of wiggling room. I can get around, not so much in the sanctuary.
Yeah, a little closer range.
All right, you guys ready to see how cool this is? Okay. First of all, the word submit in Greek is the word hypotasso. It literally means subject. Now, we can think of that as like a ruler and a subject, right? And we get bad ideas of bad rulers and so on. But the ideal ruler in the Bible is the servant, the shepherd. And so what is of primary importance and purpose for the king? The subject. And we use it in our language. Think about this for yourself. In a marriage relationship, as the wife, would you rather be the subject or the object in the marriage?
You want to be the subject.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The subject is primary. The object, in a sentence, you have subject and object in a sentence, right?
Yeah.
The subject is primary. The object is ancillary. Who wants to be objectified in their marriage?
Nobody.
You want to be subjectified. Because you're primary and you're the primary concern. That's what that means. It's not actually.
This is also a lot of words, and I'm like,
I know.
Dana's not great at English.
Yep.
Well, my point being is that this is not actually a command to women. This entire section is a command to men. And it's going to go on because it's going to, the women part is over. It says what women are. Now we're going to hear what men have to do, and it's a lot longer. And even here,
It's like twice as long.
Yeah.
yeah. But not only that, in here, check this out. Okay, so the next offensive word, the head. We don't like that either. No man's the head of my life, right? Head is kephale, and it literally means capstone. So in buildings where they had stones, you had two stones that were really important. You had the cornerstone. It was a little bit bigger, and you built everything off of that. Jesus has actually been called both of these synonymously, the capstone and the cornerstone. Once you get done with the entire structure, there's one last stone that you put on. It's called the capstone, and it's at the top of the structure. It's not at the bottom, okay? That's why it gets translated as head. But the entire purpose of it is really interesting. The capstone is the stone that holds its structure together. How many families have been abandoned by the father where the mom has to raise the children on her own? That's a failure to carry out God's admonition. or I should say God's mandate. You could argue that there are several different types of privilege in the United States. I don't know about all of them. Some I think are kind of a stretch, but I've seen the statistics that point out that two-parent privilege is a thing. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. If you got two parents, you're more likely to thrive.
Mm-hmm. Have a better emotional health.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it's just, I'm not saying that two parents guarantees that you're going to have a great life. It's just, it's harder if you don't. Mm-hmm. There's more challenges that are put in your way. Mm-hmm. That's a real thing.
Yep.
And so what's the job of the husband? It's your job to be a man and take care of your family, to be there. Doesn't mean you rule him, because he's going to go on. It says, if wives are to submit, what about husbands? Well, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. And guys are like, oh, love, we'll get her some flowers on Valentine's Day. No. In the same way, husbands should love their wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself. The word here for love, you always got to check whenever love comes up, because there's different ones that mean different things. It's agape, or it's literally agapao, and it's not an emotion. Like we think of love like, oh, I love, Usually when we say we love someone, we get, happy feelings in our gut, or, usually we mean we really, really like, or we care. Love is, in this sense, is something more. Agape love is an unconditional kind of love. It's a sacrificial love. It's meant as an action, not an emotion. And it's an action of unconditional committed service and sacrifice for the beloved. So what's harder to do? For the wife to submit, or for the husband to do agape love? What do you think?
The love.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Love's harder. And I was going to mention earlier, to subject yourself in the relationship means to owe service, obedience, and honor. That's what the wife is mandated to do. The husband is mandated to give himself entirely for his wife. His entire life. Give your entire life to your wife. That's some deep devotion that when you have both giving to each other, then you have a marriage that can make it through pretty much any bad thing that can happen. So what's happening here? What is Ephesians saying? He sums it up in verse 33. He says, let each one of you love his wife as himself, and let the wife see that she respects her husband. Okay? So now we have 4 words that have been said. But before I explain that, I want to go back to the verse just before we started. 5:22 is where we started. But in 5:21, this is what Paul says. He says, submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. So who's supposed to submit to who? When I said this on Sunday, I said, men, submit to your wives. Amen? I got a whole lot of amens. Then I said, wives, submit to your husbands. Amen? Then I got a couple from the women. But before he says any of this stuff, he says to everybody, submit to each other out of reverence for Christ. Mm-hmm. Reverence means respect. Mm-hmm. It means Jesus is my guy. He's the Lord of my life. I'm going to follow and do what he asked me to do. It's not always what I want to do, but that's what it means to revere him. So what Paul has now done is he's taken 4 words and he's turned them into synonyms. The words are submit, revere, respect, and love. And I think that he's speaking these different words to the men and the women because from my own experience, men and women are equal and yet unique. And they need to be communicated to according to how they communicate. This is generality, and I maybe said this to you guys before, but like if you watch little kids, you can discover some of the uniqueness between men and women. Little boys, when they make relationships by playing games together where they define the rules. So we're going to play cops and robbers. Bang. You're dead. Lay on the ground and count to 10 till you can get up again. We're gonna play horse, and the last shot has to be a hook shot. The rules define the relationship, and so you can compete, you can interact, and there's very specific rules by which justice will be carried out, right? If you watch little girls, the way that they create relationship is by sharing secrets. So, one little girl Addie goes up to Reese and says, two girls that aren't related but have my kids' names, Addie and Reese. Addie goes up to Reese and says, I want to tell you a secret. Don't tell anybody. You're my best friend. And there's an emotional and intellectual relationship that gets connected alongside the doing together. Mm-hmm. When men and women interact and they get into conflict, if they aren't aware of the uniqueness of the other, this is where trouble happens. I mean, this is where you hit a wall of conflict that can end in tears between men and women. It's because they don't know how to communicate properly with each other. Men and women get in an argument. A man and a woman gets in an argument about doing the dishes. The man is arguing what's happening right in front of him, the details of the argument. You said do the dishes. You didn't say I had to do them right this second. I just got home. Give me a minute. I'll take care of the dishes. Or I did the dishes yesterday. You should do the dishes. Whatever. Mm-hmm. The woman will argue the situation while at the same time, and this is why women are more complex communicatively. My wife said, you made that up. That's not a word. Well, she would know. Okay, she knows communication. You're arguing not just what's happening on the table, you're arguing how that is emotionally affecting you.
We also have receipts. Yeah, we're going to start pulling.
So it's not just the issue of the dishes, it's also, why are you doing this to me? Why are you trying to hurt me? It moves from the details to emotions. And the problem is, when arguing with a man that wants to argue the rules, their blood pressure can rise real quickly to the point that they see red and they can't think cognitively anymore. And then you have like a flight or fight response, which unfortunately does happen and does lead to abuse of kinds. I'm not saying that that's justified. What I'm saying is those are the steps by, if the man understood how his wife communicates and the wife does too, you may be able to get away from the bad stuff. Mm-hmm. Are you following what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think Paul's doing that. When he says, and again, this is a generality, this isn't for anybody, but I think there's some truth in this. When he says, husbands, love your wives. Wives, respect your husbands. I think that if a man feels that his thoughts and feelings are validated, don't have to be agreed with, just recognize that I'm saying something, as dumb as it may sound. He feels loved. If he feels that he's respected, if he's shown that he's respected, he feels that he's loved. Mm-hmm. I think it's the reverse for women. And it's this kind of agape love. If you show a woman that you love her, she will feel respected. Mm-hmm. So, what is Paul saying? He's saying the same thing to both of them. He's saying honor each other. It's not about a woman being subjugated in some way. The man's not told to rule over his wife. He's told to love her, and to love her by giving everything for her. Mm-hmm. This is a beautiful text. Why we haven't been preaching on this, it makes no sense to me. Questions, comments?
Well, now I can't really cringe at weddings anymore when they read this. I'm going to have to look at my friends and go, man, you're so smart.
The one thing that I thought of was that, like, because if you look at a Bible, they're like, they had the little headers and everything. Mm-hmm. The worst thing they could have done was not put the one before with it. So that it started with that one of like, Who decided we're going to cut it here and we're going to go, this is about marriage, and you're going to start with that one?
You know what? I love that you pointed that out, Dana, because that's not what it says in the original texts. All those headers,
They don't exist.
The
Who put
chapters,
them in? Who looked at it and was like, I'm going to put a
Somebody
header
with
right here.
sick sense of humor.
someone edited.
About marriage.
Yep, someone edited that many centuries after
Yeah.
the Bible was written down. In fact, Martin Luther, in the 1500s, I believe his Bible was broken up into chapters, but not verses, and certainly not sections that have titles as to what's what.
Worse than
I'm just
they could've done for
imagining
that.
today's day and age with like Martin Luther's Bible. Like, we're going to turn to Mark 15, about 6 or 7-ish sentences down. Find this word. This is where we're starting.
Oh, it was even worse than that. No one had Bibles except for Martin Luther, and it was written in Latin.
Oh,
it was
Never
only
mind.
that's
Follow
true.
along.
That's before the
Just listen.
mass printing.
that it was only after that he came that they finally had German in their own language. But did he think to number the system? No. So
Terrible.
So, are you thoroughly convinced that the Bible, that Christians don't denigrate women, or that the Bible doesn't denigrate women?
I'm convinced that the Bible doesn't.
I was going to say, the
Christians still
Bible
have some learning
doesn't.
to do.
Correcting your statement, the Bible does not.
All right, then I will. Then I can hold that when it says doesn't Christianity denigrate women, the answer has to be no. However, there are people who say that they are Christians who do.
Yeah. Yep.
There you go.
And they use the Bible as their excuse without actually having an understanding.
Well, they just read the first verse of Ephesians 5.
Yeah. See? It says it right here.
That's why you always got to say, keep reading.
Yep.
Keep
That's
going.
probably the most important lesson that I've learned from previously working and going to church here is don't cherry pick, because sometimes you'll see a very nice verse that says something and then you read before and after and it's like, ooh,
Actually, that doesn't work.
that's not
so
very nice.
Yeah, you put it in context. It kind of changes the meaning
Or the
of it.
opposite of,
Yep.
oh, that sounds terrible. Oh man, no, that's actually really good.
Yeah.
Changes the meaning of Severus, please.
Yep.
If I could do a
Gotta look
British
at the whole
accent, I'd do it
picture.
that way. Severus, please. Oh, whatever. Okay. Good enough for today?
I think so.
All right. We don't need to go
That
into
works.
the other one then.
No, we'll cover that next week when Ryan's back. We'll put him on the spot.
All right, Ryan.
Well, you know what? That's all that we have for today. I'm Pastor DJ Lura, and on behalf of Sarah DeYoung and Dana Mashevsky and our buddy who is getting better, Ryan Janke, thank you for joining us for another monumental
Ooh.
episode of that podcast.